Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event. My name is Randy, and I'm part of the events team here at the University Bookstore in Seattle. Tonight, author and illustrator Ruth Behar will be in discussion with Dr. Hannah Pressman to talk about her latest book, TF Fortuna's New Home. Ruth Behar is a critically acclaimed author and illustrator. TF Fortuna's New Home is the first book she has both written and illustrated for. Ruth was born in Havana, Cuba, and grew up in New York. As an author, she has explored her search for home as an immigrant and as a traveler. She was the first Latina to win a MacArthur Genius Grant, and she was also named a Great Immigrant by the Carnegie Corporation and was also awarded a John Simon Guggenheim Fellowship. She is currently a professor of anthropology at the University of Michigan. Hannah Pressman has a Ph.D. in modern Jewish literature and is a scholar of Jewish culture, religion, and identity. She is the co-editor of Choosing Yiddish, and her writing has appeared in Tablet, The Forward, and Lilith magazine. Dr. Pressman is currently working on a memoir about her Sephardic family history. Links for TF Fortuna's New Home and other books mentioned during the talk will be listed in the chat. Please submit any questions you may have for Ruth or Hannah in the Q&A link at the bottom of the screen. There will be a brief Q&A session near the end of the discussion, and this talk is being recorded and can be viewed on our YouTube channel after the event. I will now turn the microphone over to Ruth Behar and Hannah Pressman.
Thank you so much, Randy. Welcome, everybody. It is such a pleasure for me to be interviewing Ruth for this event for University Bookstore. Just to give you all a little background here, Ruth and I met back in 2015 when she came to the University of Washington to give the Stroum lectures at the UW Stroum Center for Jewish Studies. So Ruth, you were here in Seattle for about a week, give or take, in May of that year, giving talks on campus, holding workshops with students, meeting people in the community. It was wonderful. And on a personal note, I recall that we had a meeting back then, and you were very encouraging to me as I was embarking on a serious writing project that would articulate my family's history and my search to understand Sephardic identity. And I didn't have a lot of role models in the memoir writing sphere who had a more multifaceted Jewish identity like mine, but you do. We both have a side that is Sephardic, specifically from Turkey, and a side that's Ashkenazi from Eastern Europe. We both have relationships with Ladino, Judeo-Spanish, and with Yiddish, and consider how we carry the memory of those cultures. So we started that conversation 7 years ago, and we've been exchanging ideas and texts ever since. So it really is a pleasure for me to welcome you to the Reading Aloud series at the University Bookstore. I really wish we could be welcoming you back to Seattle in person, but it's the Zoom era, and this is how book tours are happening right now. So we'll make the best of it. How are you doing today, Ruth?
Well, very well. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Hannah. That's so lovely. And it was so great to meet you. And I had forgotten that it was 7 years ago already that we met, that the time has passed so fast. And it was so wonderful those days that I spent in Seattle. I absolutely loved it, and even did a little bit of field work while I was there and interviewed people in the Sephardic community of Seattle. So it was really wonderful, and getting to meet you and talk to you was definitely one of the highlights. So I'm really glad we've stayed in touch through the years, and that we've been supportive of each other's work. So it's really a special honor and a pleasure to be with you tonight. And I want to thank you and the University Bookstore and everybody who's tuning in to our conversation.
Yes, so today we have just a special treat to be discussing your latest children's book, TF Fortuna's New Home, which came out just last month from Knopf Books for Young Readers. And I have to say, personally, it's exciting, not only because I'm just generally such a fan of your work, but also because I have 3 kids of my own whom I'm trying to teach about Sephardic culture. And let me tell you, we need more books in this field. We need more diverse portrayals of Jewish families and Jewish identities. in children's literature. So I'm so excited to see this book out in the world. I hope that everyone out there has gotten a copy, or will be getting a copy. I think there's a link now in the chat how to access the book. And so I wanted to just dive in first with congratulating you on the publication of
Yeah.
TF Fortuna's new home. Mashallah, Mazel Tov, all the things.
Thank you. Let me hold up the book for
Yeah,
people
let's
who
see.
haven't seen it. So it's in English, Tia Fortuna's New Home, as you can see here, Jewish Cuban Journey. And then this is one of the things I'm so happy about. It's simultaneously published in Spanish, so you can read it in Spanish, El Nuevo Hogar de Tia Fortuna, una historia judía cubana. And
Wow.
so that's really lovely that you can read it in both, either, both, however you'd like. It's in both languages. So that's
Amazing.
makes me really happy. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, this is your third children's book, actually, after Lucky Broken Girl and Letters from Cuba. Now, just so everyone in the audience is, knows, those are both middle grade novels. So for kids, around 6th through 8th grade or so. But TF Fortuna is your first picture book for the much younger set, right? Ages 4 to 8, I believe it's designated for. So, which is a different, I can attest, different needs, different awareness, different ways of storytelling for that group. So to get us started this afternoon in Seattle, evening elsewhere, tell me what inspired you to write Tia Fortuna's story. Why did you want to write this book in particular?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And you kind of answered it a little bit for me before when you were talking about how there are very, very few Sephardic books out there for kids, for young readers, and even older readers as well. For people who don't know what it means to be Sephardic Jews are Jews who descend from ancestors who were from Spain. And most of them left sometime around 1492 or earlier, left Spain because they were expelled from what was then Spain in the 15th century. And they were the people who chose to leave because they wanted to hold on to their Jewish beliefs. They could have stayed, but they would have had to convert to Catholicism. So the Sephardic Jews are the ones who chose departure, who chose expulsion, and then they went on to live in many different places. Some of them went from Portugal, then onwards, to the Netherlands. Others went south to Morocco and North Africa. Others went on to Italy and Greece and Turkey. And so this is a community that always remembered that they were originally from Spain and held on to a language that we call Ladino or Judeo-Espanol or Judeo-Spanish. So a language that is rooted in the Spanish of the 15th century, but adds many other languages through all these different displacements and journeys. And so I was very aware, being Sephardic on my father's side of the family, that there wasn't a lot of literature out there for any age group, actually, about Sephardic Jews, certainly not when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s. There just wasn't that much out there. And today, having written these two middle grade novels, as you said, I started realizing, well, we don't really have a lot of books that have to do with the Sephardic culture. When we think of Jews, we mostly think of Jews who have Eastern European background, but we don't think about Sephardic Jews. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a picture book that would be readily accessible to kids about a Sephardic story? So it kind of started with that. But to tell you the truth, about 5 years ago, I started thinking about a story. I had this image in my mind of an elderly woman who would be an aunt, not a grandmother, but an aunt, a tia, an auntie. And Tia Fortuna was the name that came to me because Fortuna is a fairly common name in the Sephardic community, and I love it. And so I thought, okay, Tia Fortuna, and she has to leave her home by the beach, and her niece is going to come and help her spend that last day in her home by the beach, and then help her move to her new home. And for some reason, that story just kept going through my mind. And I thought, what a challenge to try to write a picture book story where it would have to be under 1,000 words, usually under 800 or 900 words. Could I tell a meaningful story with so few words? And so it was a great challenge for me. I love challenges. I love writing in different styles and voices. It wasn't easy. The book went through many, many, many revisions. I rewrote this story probably more times than I've rewritten either of my middle grade novels, trying to get it right. And what helped me is that I also write poetry. And so I had some background in thinking about being concise and precise and using just the right words and all of that. And so those two things inspired me. On the one hand, I had this idea for a story that would take place in Miami. It would be about an aunt, somewhat inspired by a real aunt, that I love, that I have in Miami with my father's younger sister. So it was kind of inspired by her, but it was really more than her. It was like this figure of an elderly Sephardic woman. So that was going through my mind. And then I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have a book like this? There wasn't a book like this when I was a little girl. And wouldn't it be nice to have a book that would really, in some way, show the magic of Sephardic culture and traditions?
Wonderful, wonderful. I know that your fans out there and the young readers are so excited and grateful that you have taken this on yourself to depict this special community and as part of your heritage. I know that you have a new member of your family also who might be interested in picture books in a little bit, right? A new granddaughter appeared recently.
Yes, thank you. Well, this was so great. When I started writing the book, I didn't know I was going to be a grandmother. So I was just writing this picture book thinking, I love picture books. This is going to be
Picture books
so
are
much
great.
fun, a
Yeah.
story with pictures. What could be better? And then when I think we were like finishing up the illustrations or getting to the end of that process of choosing them, that my granddaughter was born. And then I said, there was a real reason to do a picture book. I'm going to be a grandmother. And so she has the book. My granddaughter has the book. She can't read it yet. She's only a year old, but she loves carrying it around.
Oh.
And I love it when, it's hard to get her to stop because she's now at that stage where she's running around rather than really walking. But she loves to carry the book, and she knows it's important somehow because we keep trying to take pictures of her holding the book.
Totally.
She knows this book is important, but it's hers. She can do whatever
Oh.
she wants with it, but she doesn't tear it up or anything. She just kind of carries it around and sometimes opens a page and looks at it. She loves books. She loves all her board books right now. She loves opening and looking through them. So I know that soon we'll be able to read it to her, and that will just be so amazing.
That'll be really, really special, I'm sure. Wow. Well, let's shift to talk about some of the. You said it was kind of a process. You were working on this for a while, and I can definitely sympathize with the need to sort of channel a broad and complex history into, a digestible number of words for a little kid's attention span. I have to do that all the time when I'm trying to explain things to my kids. But let's talk a little bit about the design of this book, because and I'm familiar with all of your work across many genres, and I know that the visual is very important too. You've collaborated with many artists on different projects, and something that's really striking, anyone who sees just the cover of the book will see that there are just these beautiful glowing colors, that there's a really rich design, lots of detail. It just glows. It really makes the text sing when there's such beautiful pictures alongside it. So I was hoping that for you to tell us a little more about the design inspiration for the book, anything that went into the illustrations. And should I go ahead and share
Oh,
that?
let's wait on that. Let's wait.
Okay.
We'll wait on
Let's,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
let me
that's
say a
fine.
little bit about that
Yeah,
question of the art.
mhm.
Well, the artist, I should say, the artist is Devin Holtzworth, and you can see her name up here on the cover of the book. So she's the illustrator, um, but before my editor suggested her as the illustrator, I already had some ideas in mind of like how was going to want the art to look. I mean, I had a vision of just how the book might look. And I wanted the art to be very exuberant and tropical. There are going to be allusions to Cuba, to Havana, Miami, the ocean, the sky, the sea. I mean, all of that, the flowers, the orchids, the palm trees, the banyan trees. I mean, I had this like image of this like incredible tropical exuberance and tremendous sense of color. So I had that in mind. And then I actually created a whole portfolio of images that we, eventually gave to Devin that had all kinds of things in it. Like it had pictures of my Sephardic family, because I said, well, might want to see like what Sephardic people look like, not to create a stereotypical image. And I actually think the image of TF Fortuna looks a lot like my abuela, my paternal
Oh,
grandmother, which is great. It's something about the slant of her eyes and just the way she looks. And so there were pictures, and then there were lots of symbols that I also included in this portfolio. I included pictures of these bracelets that Tia Fortuna wears, since the Sephardic ladies, Cuban ladies that I know in Miami wear them, and I love to wear them. So I said she's going to have a lot of these bracelets, these lucky eye bracelets, because they're worn by by the women, and things like that, and hamsa. So I sent like pictures of all these symbols that I thought would be important to incorporate. And then I really love embroidered pillows, and I have one here to show you all. So this is one of my embroidered pillows, Duerme Amor Mío. And I just love pillows embroidered with Spanish expressions and words. So I sent that too. And one of them ends up in the book. In fact, there's an embroidered pillow in the book that's modeled on one of mine. But, so I had all of these ideas, but even better, if you could see the pillow here, Amor Mío.
oh, nice.
Yeah, so I love that. But Devin had her own ideas of what the art should look like, which was great because her mother's family was from Panama and Costa Rica, and she also spent a lot of time in her growing up years in Miami. So she knows, these contexts, she knows these cultures, and she was really able to bring that kind of beautiful exuberance into the art. I mean, like a scene like this one, is just
Yeah,
so stunning.
gorgeous.
Um, but throughout, I mean, it's just her use of color is so beautiful, and she really thought of, I'll show you just like the scene, at the beach, at the ocean.
Mhm.
She said she really thought a lot about all of this, and it really just made it a pleasure to work with her. And then we were also coming up with the idea for the case wrap, and this is wonderful. So the case wrap is a
Oh,
suitcase.
I've only seen the
Yeah.
advanced copy, so I didn't see that nice touch on the outside. That's
Yeah, so
very
it's
resonant for you and all of your travel writing.
very resonant, right? So, because Tia, is leaving a home and going to another, and this isn't the first time she's doing that, so the role of the suitcase. So yeah, so the art, the images all came together so beautifully, and I really am grateful to Devin, who was just really an extraordinary artist, illustrator.
Yeah, no, I you can see that it it's the fruit of it's a labor of love. It's the fruit of a really dynamic collaboration. And I love also that there's a kind of documentary aspect of it, right? That you gave this a kind of scrapbook with family
Mm,
pictures and material culture that was important to you, and the symbols that could be integrated. It seems like it was just, to use a Jewish word, a shidduch. It was a great match, but
mhm.
between your vision for the book and Devin's ability to kind of make it real on the page. So
Yeah,
so should I
absolutely.
should I share the page with
Yeah,
the
yeah, let's do that.
bodecas
Yeah,
now? Okay, hold on one
share the
second.
Borregas page.
Yeah, get everyone hungry for some bodecas. Okay,
There
so
you go.
we wanted to just share one example of the beautiful design of this book. And we see Tia Fortuna and her niece Estrella, which is another of these old Sephardic names, meaning star from the Spanish. Yeah, did you want to point out anything particular about this page?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, a couple of different things. So, um, we wanted to show, and particularly in this page, how do you show like all this flow of history, all this time that has passed, and TF Fortuna is trying to convey to Estrella, like, what her heritage is, what her culture is. And so we thought a lot about this, and I sent over some images, some pictures, of Spain, and the synagogues that have been reconstructed in Toledo and things like that. And then Devin came up with this like lovely,
River.
collage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
collage
a
feeling.
collage of images, this river of images, and it's like, it's coming out of the borrecas. So the borrecas are a very traditional food among Sephardic Jews. You might think of them in Spanish as an empanada or a turnover or something like that. And I grew up eating them. Definitely, my grandmother made them very often, usually stuffed with different things, with spinach and cheese, or with potatoes and cheese and things like that. And so it seemed very normal that Tia Fortuna would have a bunch of borrecas, ready for Estrella. It's like a perfect snack. You warm them up, and they're great food to go. And so here they're sharing the borrecas. Well, Tia Fortuna is also, packing up some things at her home. Notice at the bottom, and I love this detail in the art. There's a little bird down here with the key, and the key is going to be important in the story. So it's a very nice little detail. But the
Yeah.
bird follows Tia Fortuna from Cuba, all the way to her new home. But the important thing here is what Estrella is asking, because she wants to know, how do you make borrecas taste so delicious, Tia? And I'll tell you my secret, says Tia Fortuna. I fill them with potatoes and cheese and esperanza. Now, in case you don't know what esperanza means, you find out in the next sentence when Estrella says, how can borrecas be filled with hope? And then Tia Fortuna says, because they are the food of your grandfathers, 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 and your grandmothers, grandmothers, grandmothers. They took them from Spain to Turkey to Cuba. Now we eat them here in Miami. Tia smiles. We come from people who found hope wherever they went. Esperanza, 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 I say aloud, and I help Tia pack a box with the rest of the borrecas. And then you see the word esperanza also coming there, like on the page, and beautiful handwriting right above Estrella. So she's thinking about hope, and what kind of hope you can have when you've lost a home, but you're going to find another one.
It's just so evocative on so many levels, and I feel like I could sit here unpacking it for a long time. But thank you for sharing this particular spread with our audience today. And yes, that key there. I don't want to no spoilers
Yeah.
at the reading aloud series, but that is a very, very important symbol in Sephardic history and Sephardic culture, and it plays a really important role in the book. So if those who read the book will find out the mystery of the key. So
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing now. We can just go back to the two of us. Let's widen the lens a little bit now, and talk about some of this history. So Tia has a suitcase that she's had to pack to go from place to place, which is kind of this motif of the journey, of the need to move and go to another home. Each of your children's books engage with a different aspect of Sephardic history or Jewish history in a certain time and place, right? So in Lucky Broken Girl, we had the Cuban American immigrant experience in New York City in the mid 20th century, which was an autobiographical narrative based on your experience. Then in Letters from Cuba, the plight of Jewish refugees who were trying to get out of Europe at the beginning of World War II and trying to find a safe place on the island of Cuba. And then in this new book, there's also an engagement with historical narratives in a certain time and place. So I was wondering if you could articulate for us what Sephardic or general Jewish history you're trying to portray for this younger audience.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. You're a historian by training, and I'm an anthropologist, but I'm one of these anthropologists who's always been very into history. And for me, history is really important. When I do any kind of work, any kind of writing, I need to know exactly when the story is taking place. Otherwise, I really can't tell it. For me, I can't just write in a vague moment of the present or the past. I have to really have it like very clearly pinpointed. Like you said with Lucky Broken Girl, it's actually 1966. It's like a very specific date, and these boots are made for walking is like the popular song of that year. And I needed to have that kind of specificity, and the same with Letters from Cuba, 1938. It's like the eve of the war, and it needed to be exactly that date. With this book, there isn't exactly a date in that sense, but I thought of two historical moments converging in this story. On the one hand, we're definitely referencing 1492, the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. We don't use those terms because this is a book for young readers, so I'm not going to weigh them down with all of that. But they know that, okay, there's a background from Spain from way back, but then there's a background from Turkey. And in this particular case, because there's so many different immigrant journeys, this is an immigrant whose family then went from Turkey to Cuba, as my family did. And that's why I'm Cuban and speak Spanish, because that's where the grandparents settled. And so there's that sense of movement, that sense of displacement, that this is a community that's moved from place to place. And I wanted that, to be present. So there's this very long history, that TF Fortuna is trying to share with little Estrella, and kind of letting her know that her ancestors come from this very long history of movement, and being forced to leave in a lot of cases, or sometimes feeling that they had to leave and start all over again. So there's that kind of long history. It's not specifically dated, but it's real, and we kind of see it in Tia Fortuna's personality, and kind of her sense of, yes, it's a sad we're leaving, but let's enjoy each day while we can. And that's kind of like what she's trying to pass on, to Estrella. It's not mañana yet. It's not tomorrow yet. Today we're here on the beach, and let's enjoy it. So kind of her wisdom is a result of that long sense of history and long sense of movement. The other history it's converging with, it's the history of the present and what is going on right now in Miami Beach and Surfside. It's a part of the world that I really love. I grew up in New York. When we came from Cuba, we settled in New York. So I think of myself as a Cuban New Yorker, but I've always spent a lot of time in Miami because part of our family left New York and settled in Miami because they didn't like the cold weather for obvious reasons. And so my grandparents, were on my mother's side retired to Miami, and I would spend a lot of time there, and I got to know Miami very well. And I continue to go there frequently. And like I said, I have a Sephardic aunt who lives in Miami Beach. So all this is to say is that I've been watching as things have been changing in the area of Miami Beach, in particular in Surfside, and a lot of very modest, humble cottages or bungalows on the beach, very modest, buildings on the beach are being torn down and demolished to build luxury residences, to build, luxury hotels. And this is what's happening to the actual building of the Seaway.
In real life.
In real life. I mean, I think it's all, I mean, not I think, I know, I saw it. It's been torn down, and now they've just left the facade, and they're going to build something, new and luxurious there. When I was writing the book, that hadn't happened yet. I was only reading reports that it was about to happen. So I couldn't say yet with, with definite truth that it was going to happen, but now it has. And so I've been watching that change along the whole coast of Miami Beach, and how that's changing, and then wondering what's going to happen to elders like Tia Fortuna, who might live in these very humble places, but that are lovely because they're right next to the ocean. And so what's going to happen to people like that? The whole question of affordable housing is very real, and I think about it a lot. And so that kind of history of the present was the other topic that I was trying to allude to. Again, not in a way that would be overwhelming for a small child, but thinking about what happens to elders when they get moved out of places like this, like the Seaway. So I had that in mind as well, because I was literally watching it happen.
Wow. I mean, who would have thought that when you started this book that it would intersect with current events on the Miami coastline in the way that it did. But I read the book, among other things, as a love letter to Miami, to feels very local, as much as it has the sweep of Sephardic history. It does feel like a history of the present, like you said, and this like love letter to that neighborhood, to that
Mm.
closeness and the intimacy, and the fact that Estrella could go and visit the little pink casita, and see her aunt there. It really, it's so poignant, and I love that there's this intergenerational relationship, because one aspect of the Sephardic diaspora is that, families like my mother grew up on a different, or raised her children on a different continent than where her parents lived, right? So and I have first cousins that I've seen maybe 2 or 3 times in my life, because we are so spread out now. And so for Estrella to have her tia so close by, and to be so familiar with her modest home, and to have such a loving connection with that space in Miami, I felt, it showed a Sephardic family in such a beautiful light. And I think that the Jewish community in the South Florida area will hopefully be able to read this book, and to see all the love that you put into it for that part of the country.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping so. I'm going to be in Miami soon, next month, early next
Oh
month,
no!
and we'll be presenting it
Oh
there.
great!
So yeah, but many people in Miami are already loving it and enjoying it and really thinking of it very much, as you said, as a Miami story. It's also a Cuban story
Mhm.
because that's the other history I didn't mention because it begins in Havana and it begins with TF Fortuna, waving goodbye to the
Yeah,
ships because she
exactly.
lived right by the port. And as my father and his family did, they lived right next to the port of Havana, so they were always seeing the ships go by. So I thought of that too. So that's the other part of the history that she's part of that migration of people who left after 1959, after the Cuban Revolution, and started a new life in the U.S. So that's another departure too. The Cuban departure, which is not necessarily the Sephardic departure, but in her case, the two converge.
Right, which is your story as well. I I wanted to ask also, in terms of portraying the specificity of um, families like Estrella and Tia Fortuna's in Miami, the way that they speak to each other, the language that they use, which is some Spanish and some Judeo-Spanish and English, um, and then also with the different, Jewish and Mediterranean symbols that are evoked in the illustrations, and that specific culture and heritage. Why do you think it's important for young readers, for 5-year-olds, to see that depiction in children's literature, Jewishly or generally?
Yeah, well, I think, it has different dimensions. I think for a Jewish child, seeing this book as a way of understanding if the child happens to be Sephardic, it's like, oh, wow, I can see myself here. I know what borrecas are. I've maybe seen lucky eyes. I know some of these things. They're familiar to me. And so that child will feel, very, very seen, as we say these days. And for a Jewish child of a different tradition, of a different cultural tradition, it'll be, educational, like, oh, there's different ways to be Jewish. You can be Jewish in this Sephardic way, and that's different from this, Yiddish or Eastern European way. So it can definitely create a sense of diversity, in the Jewish community, and understanding that there's many different ways to call yourself Jewish. And then outside of the Jewish community, for those for whom this is completely new, I've been seeing as people have reviewed the book that they're so excited to learn that this exists, that this culture exists, because so many people just don't know that it does. So that's kind of interesting. And then within the Latinx or Latino community, Hispanic community, it's kind of exciting to see that that this culture exists. That in a way, Sephardic Jews are kind of the original Latinos, in a way. I mean, they've held on to their, Hispanic identity through many, many centuries, while also holding on to their Jewishness. And I think for kids, it's very important to understand about heritage and culture and history. I think it gives them a sense of belonging. And I think a book like this can get them to think about, well, what is my heritage? Or what are the important symbols, in my culture? What are the important foods in my culture? What are the stories that I hear about the ancestors? And I think kids are very fascinated with who came before them and how they got to be here in the world. And so I think giving kids kind of that sense of an anchor through history, heritage, culture, I think that's really important. And for kids to learn about different traditions is important, because then they can question stereotypes they might have. If you're not Jewish, they might have an idea of what it is to be Jewish, but it might be wrong. It might be a stereotype. And in a book like this, they can kind of learn, oh, so this is like a way to be Jewish. Okay, I understand. Or this is a way to be Latina. You can be Latina and have all of these other things in your life. So I think, it's very important to break stereotypes. It's very important to give children, anchors and in history and heritage and a sense of belonging. I think it creates, more tolerance and hopefully, by understanding how we're different, we also understand how we're all human. This is the anthropologist talking now.
I like it. I like it. Well, actually, there are psychological studies that show that children who know their family's stories, what previous generations went through, good and bad, have stronger resilience overall and are better able to adapt to things, right? So there is a power to knowing your family's story, and that your family, prevailed in difficult circumstances and all of that. So I thank you for contributing to that sort of conversation, and both within the Jewish community, giving Sephardic or part Sephardic like me families some representation, then also connecting beyond the Jewish community to either the Latino or Latinx community, people who have Spanish heritage, speak the Spanish language, and sort of connecting all of these different communities, through a simple story. It's a beautiful thing. So just thank you. I think I have time for one more question, and then we're gonna open up to, I think, a few Q&As have come in from our viewers. But I wanted to ask, kind of now taking a step back, you've had such a marvelous teaching and writing career across different genres, inside the academy, outside the academy, anthropology, poetry, memoir, and more. I was hoping that you could situate for us this swerve, to use another zeitgeisty word, a swerve into children's literature, within or next to your literary and scholarly oeuvre. Is this foray a natural extension of the writing that you've done before? And what of this process feels particularly exciting or risky to you as a writer?
Yeah, well, I would say both. I would say it's both an extension of my work and it's a departure from the work I've done before. So I think a lot of the topics that interested me in my work as an anthropologist and as a writer for adults, I think it's moved into the writing that I'm doing for children. So topics like immigration, identity, culture, heritage, all these things we've been talking about. I mean, I've been researching, Sephardic culture for the last 20 years at least. I made a documentary film about the Sephardic Jews of Cuba, so these are things that have interested me for a long time. And I feel like now it's the child in me getting to speak about these topics. So, so I became the adult and I tried to learn, how to write in a sophisticated way as we do as adults. And now it's kind of like giving myself permission to be the child and to think about some of the stories I would have liked to have heard when I was a child and I didn't. Like I would have loved a book like TF Fortuna, when I was a child, but it didn't exist, so I just I didn't have anybody to really like explain Sephardic identity to me, so I just kind of, tried to pick up what I could. And so I think the ability to share some of that understanding that I have now and share it with kids and kind of fill in gaps, of things that I didn't have as a child, stories that I didn't have as a child, but that I would have liked to have had. So in that sense, it's definitely a departure. And it's risky in the sense that I'm writing fiction now, and my whole career I've written nonfiction, and I've written mainly stories based on interviews or notes that I've taken, things I've observed with people and so on. And so the work has had to be like more, accurate, since I'm trying to discuss like what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've observed, and kind of reporting more, about the things that I've experienced. And that's very different from writing fiction, where I can base it on real people and real things that happened, as has been true with, particularly with Lucky Broken Girl, which is based on something that really happened to me. But I wasn't recording all the conversations that took place when I was a child. So I had to make up those conversations and try to reconstruct them as best I could. And so, moving into that fictional universe is very, very different. And it's very liberating for me, because I can make things up. I can put words in a character based on my mother, and it's kind of fun because I can make a lot of characters based on real people in my family in particular. I can make them sometimes a lot nicer than they really were, which is kind of good, because then it's very healing. It's like, well, oh, he or she wasn't really that great, but in the story, I'm going to make them much nicer and I'll feel a lot better. And
Some
it allows me,
rehabilitation.
yeah, it allows me to create like things I would have liked, that didn't really happen. There's a scene in Lucky Broken Girl that didn't happen at all, that I love. And my mother read it and she said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember that." And then I told her, "No, that never happened. I made that up, in the story." So I think that ability to be able to really use my imagination and create dialogue and create scenes and take, real characters and merge them with imaginary characters, it's a lot of fun, and it's very, very liberating after a long career of trying very hard, to write stories based on actual experiences.
Mhm. Well, actually, on that note, let me ask a quick follow-up. If I may ask,
Yeah.
are there more children's books, on the horizon percolating for you that people can look forward to, possibly?
Actually, yes, because I'm really enjoying this process of writing for kids. So, as you know, I'm at work on another middle grade novel right now, also with the theme, Sephardic theme, and this one has four young girls about age 11. And they are living in different historical moments, one in Spain, one in Turkey, one in Cuba, one in Miami, and their stories all converge at the end. So I'm working on that right now. Have a draft of it done, and I have a new picture book that that's on the way, but that I can't talk about yet.
Oh,
We're not
top
announcing it
secret.
yet, but it's going to be very exciting. It's very different from this one, and yeah, and it's very, very exciting. So that's also happening. So that one has already found, its editor and publisher, so it's
Okay.
definite, but I can't announce it yet.
Okay.
And then working on another one to follow that one, another picture book. So definitely am enjoying the picture book genre, but don't want to give up writing the longer form novels. So trying to see if I can keep a balance, yeah, between the two forms.
Oh, wow. I mean, those of us who have, young readers in the family we're just so blessed that you have, taken up this new aspect of your writing and that you have so many things in the pipeline. That's great to hear. So well, good luck with those new projects. And it sounds like your granddaughter's going to have more books to carry around soon. Which she'll
I
have to
need
get
to
a tote
write
bag.
another one that I'm thinking about that's going to be specifically about her. So
Oh,
that one's also kind of, yeah, and whirling around in my head.
I have to say when my daughter turned to my middle child, her older brother, wrote her a book, and we took it to Kinko's and had it put a little spiral spine on and had it laminated, and it's one of her favorite books still to
Oh
read.
my God, that is so
I know.
beautiful. That is so
Kids
beautiful.
really get attached to books if they know that they come from the heart, right? Which
Absolutely.
So,
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. You'll have to share that book with me one day. I'd love to see
oh,
it.
it's funny. So, okay, well, I think we're just about at time for some audience questions.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I see that one has come in from the chat from my friend Brian Kirshen, he's a Judeo-Spanish expert out in Binghamton, New York. He says, congrats, Ruth, and mashallah. So wonderful to see or hear that there's an audiobook. Is that the case? And that is an amazing feature and important. Can you tell us about the process of recording the books in English and Spanish? Who did them? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well,
Thank
I'm
you,
so
Brian.
glad. Thank you, Brian, for that. That's lovely. Actually, I recorded the audiobooks. Yes, I was asked by Penguin Random House. They said, "Would you like to record your book, or do you want us to get an actor?" They said, "We'd love it if you would do it because it would be so nice to have it in your voice." And I said, "I would love to do it." And so they set it all up for me. I went to a recording studio right here in Ann Arbor that I didn't even know existed after many years living here, a professional, recording studio where they record, music and stuff like that. And I went, and they very fortunately assign a director to you or coach who, to whom, who's listening as you record it and will say, no, do this, no, do that, no, that's sounding too this or too that or too stilted or to whatever. And so it was great. So I recorded the English with one director, and then as soon as that one was done, another director came on, a Spanish speaker, and I recorded the Spanish. So I did both myself, and they are available if you look up the audiobook version of the book in either language. You can get it. It's very short because it's a picture book. So I think each book is about 15 minutes long. And so it's a very inexpensive audiobook, or if you happen to have some of those Audible credits, you can get it that way. So I had a lot of fun having a chance to record it. And I was just so thrilled that they gave me that opportunity.
Was that your first time recording an audiobook, or had you done other recordings for other of your publications?
Yeah, so I did the recording for Lucky Broken Girl. That one I did myself. And then the following book, Letters from Cuba, a professional actor read it, and it's wonderful. I actually really love Rebecca Soler did Letters from Cuba, and it sounds amazing in her voice. It's always hard to appreciate your own voice when you hear a recording. But Letters from Cuba was perfect that she did it. It was really a book that I think required that kind of professional acting voice. But with Lucky Broken Girl, since it was based on my story, it seemed right for me to record that one. So we've done it both ways.
Audiobooks are great babysitters, and they also are great in the car
Mm.
for kids. So thank you for doing that and expanding your skill set. Now you're a voice actor. So.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far, but it was a lot of fun, and being able to read it in Spanish also was just delightful. It was a really great experience.
Yes. How many of your children's books are available in Spanish?
I'm glad you asked. So we have Letters from Cuba. I have it right here. In fact, Cartas de Cuba
Oh,
is
nice.
available in Spanish, and so I'm very excited about that. And then Lucky Broken Girl will be out in April in Spanish, which seemed like a long time in the future, but April's coming up. So it'll be out in April with a different title, because we were trying very hard to translate Lucky Broken Girl into Spanish. And we came up with Mi Buena Mala Suerte. My good bad luck, and it would be in English, Mi Buena Mala Suerte, because it's very hard to get that Lucky Broken Girl, feeling into Spanish. And so we decided to just, change it to make it something different. So it's Mi Buena Mala Suerte. And I've already seen the whole translation, and it's wonderful. So I'm very excited that it's going to be in Spanish. That was something that really was important to me.
Yeah. Translation is something that I've studied kind of on a theoretical level, and that I've also done on a practical level. And it's I view it as almost a sacred process to
Mhm.
render something, whether it's something you wrote originally or if it's someone else's work, but to render that in a way that's accessible for someone else to read, that it's really special work. And I think I'm sure it's so wonderful for you to have your writing that originated in English available in Spanish, because that language has been so important to your family and your story. So
Mhm.
that's wonderful.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Spanish is my first language and it's the language I still speak with my family and I feel so comfortable in it, but I write in English because I was educated in the English language. I arrived in the United States when I was 5 years old, so schooling was in English. I had a little bit of schooling in Cuba, but not enough. I've always felt to really be able to write professional level Spanish, but I always review all the translations, and I often change certain phrasings and words. So I'm very into it. And when I write poetry, I write my poems in English and Spanish, and I move between the two languages. So that's where I feel confident in being able to write in Spanish. But prose, I haven't really tried yet to translate like one of my full length books, but maybe in the future.
Well, moving between languages, just like TF Fortuna moves between countries, it's always about finding the language or the place that's going to be home for you. I know that's been a theme throughout your career that is just portrayed so beautifully in this book. Let's see, I guess I'll throw it back to Randy. Did you want to ask anything or provide any other um, pointers for the audience before we close out today? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
All right, I'm back. Well, I just want to thank you both for that extraordinary conversation. I enjoyed Letters from Cuba. I haven't read your new book yet, but Letters from Cuba was just extraordinary. The entire book is just done through letters, which I just love. Certainly a great, great read. So again, I just want to thank you both very much. And I also wanted to thank today's audience and anybody who's watching on the replay on YouTube. So links for TF Fortuna's new home are on our website, and we hope that you will join us again soon. Do you have anything else to add or say? We have a couple more minutes.
Well, I definitely want to say thank you to you and to the University Bookstore. It's been such a pleasure to be able to share my book with you and with an audience in Seattle and elsewhere. So very, very grateful for having given me a home here at the University Bookstore. So that's wonderful. And Hannah, all your questions and comments and discussion points have been really, really amazing. I don't know if there are any other. I don't know if there are any other questions. I don't think so because I have the questions here. But if you have any other questions, the last question that you'd like to ask, very, very happy to answer it.
Actually, I am curious. What inspired you to write in the epistolary style of a sister writing a letter to another sister in Poland from Cuba? What inspired you to do that? The time setting, as I recall, was 1938. And how did you decide to do that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I loved writing that book, Letters from Cuba. It was a really fun project to write a book entirely in the form of letters. And what inspired me is that immigrants in that era, in the early 20th century, that's how they communicated with one another. They didn't have telephones, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have cell phones, all the things that are so important for us now, the technology that we absolutely depend on to communicate. They certainly didn't have Zoom. And so I thought, wow, letters was how they communicated. That's how they shared stories with one another. In this particular book, in Letters from Cuba, Esther isn't sending the letters to her sister in Poland because that would actually be too expensive because she's writing a lot of letters and it would take a lot of time to go from Cuba to Poland in 1938. And, communication was difficult also for many other reasons. And so she's collecting all these letters And the idea is that if she can keep writing letters to her sister in Poland, then her sister's going to have to come to Cuba to read them. And so the letters kind of become this like magnet, this like magical thing that's going to pull her sister Malka to Cuba. And so that's why I decided the letters would be a kind of magical way for the two sisters to communicate before they're actually together with one another. And then finally the sister arrives from Poland and they can sit together and read the letters, and Malka can find out what Esther's experience in Cuba was before they were reunited. So those were my inspirations. I looked at a lot of historical collections of letters. Historians are amazing. They've put together volumes of letters that immigrants wrote. Some of them from like the late 1800s, some of them from the early 1900s, like immigrants, from Poland, from Italy, Jewish immigrants from different parts of Eastern Europe. And you can actually read these old letters, and those were very inspiring to me and taught me, how to write a letter. That's what inspired me. And I didn't have a lot of letters that my grandmother actually wrote, but she had some postcards that I inherited that have like a picture of her on one side and then a message on the other side, a personal message on the other side. And so that was an inspiration too, thinking that she had those postcards, that she was sharing those with family members. So that's really what did it. And I just thought it would be so much fun to read a novel that would be all letters, that it would just be like, a page, more of a page turner, to just, be able to see like, oh, what's Esther up to today? So it's kind of like a diary format a little bit too, but it's directed to her sister. And I love that because I always love to know who a story is being told to. Just like sometimes you just have like a story, somebody's just telling their story and you're thinking, okay, this is very nice, but who needs to listen to this story? And so when I wrote it, I thought, okay, it's her younger sister who needs to hear this story. And that's why it made sense to write it as all letters.
I love just, observing from a genre level that children's literature is for you kind of playground where you can experiment a little bit. And because each of your the 3 children's books that you've published so far has a different form and kind of like you've adjusted the storytelling to to fit the story. And I love that you're able to play a little bit and explore it. I also, Randy, I agree. It's such an effective and moving way to learn a family story through these letters from one sister to another. And to when Malka finally reads them all, it's such a cool moment. It's almost like the book within the book or something. But
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's so true. And then I think for the reader, you get the sense that you're like reading over Esther's shoulder. You're like, let's see what she's going to say to her sister next. So as a reader, there's kind of that pleasure too of like, of kind of being in on secrets also, which I think makes it a lot of fun too.
Much nicer than reading an email chain or something. But it's like
Definitely. I'm sure you could write a good novel that way too.
I'm sure people have.
And some people have.
Yeah. And also through Twitter too. People, I think, use Twitter to write poems.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of the great things about that book was just the nostalgia of how much emotion a letter can have, because it wasn't that long ago where people had to write letters. It doesn't have, the texting is a relatively recent thing, and it's a shame people don't write letters like they used to. And I know when I was in the military in the 1980s, the emotion that a letter would bring from your family coming in would bring tears to some of the GI's eyes. So certainly that book really rekindled that feeling in me. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, that's so beautiful what you just said. It's so true. I mean, a letter can be or was so meaningful, or can be so meaningful in those settings, where you're just disconnected, and then getting a letter from somebody, and just the a classical letter that's like written by hand and, directed to a specific person. It's just such a loving, way to communicate.
I think we should bring back those postcards, that style from the late 19th and early 20th century, which had the senders staged studio portrait on the front, and then they would just write a sort of formulaic token of my affection from your sister so-and-so, which I have a couple of those in different languages in my family memorabilia collection. And it's a lost art, and I applaud you for bringing that back into children's literature, and I think we should bring it back more general. I personally, I mean, this will come as a surprise to you, Ruth. I love writing letters. I always have. I always wrote letters to my teachers during the summer. It's like I still write letters to my grandmother. So it's a wonderful way to tell a story. And so I can't wait to see what you do next in your next 3 or 4 children's books that you're already working on, and your other pursuits as well, from anthropology to memoir. I'm on board. I'm a fan of all of it, and I just want to thank you again for sharing your story, with us in all these different genres, and for bringing the Cuban Jewish story and Sephardic story to the fore in literature, and making that history accessible to people in different languages too. Really, just mashallah, mazel tov. Like I said, just thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Hannah. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. So grateful for tonight. This was lovely. Thank you, Randy, and thank you, University Bookstore. It's just been wonderful. Thanks so much.
Well, Ruth and Hannah, thank you both so much. And remember that the links for TF Fortuna's new home and other of Ruth's books are on our website, and we certainly hope that you will all join us again soon. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.